Welcome back to the tiny house. We're planning to reuse this small window as the new bathroom window, and I'm going to clean up, repair, and reframe the back door. I'm going to start with the window. The first issue to tackle is that the window is missing a little chunk of the frame from the middle. I'm going to repair that with some Bondo, and then just shape it into place. The window frame isn't symmetrical, so I'm also going to add some wood to the bottom of the frame. I cut the wood to length, ripped it to width, and then planed it down to be the thickness that made everything even. Then I joined it with domino tenons and glued it together. After some sanding, the window is in better shape, but it needs a frame. I'm using 1x6 poplar for the frame. First, I made a box. Very exciting, I know. I'm using the domino to join things again. So I cut, glue, and sand. Then added some spacers to the inside of the box so the window has a stop when it closes. Once I made a simple box, I wanted to add an angle to the ledge for water to run off. In order to do that, I added an 1/8 inch spacer to the bottom of the board and ran it through the planer a few times. Now I have a nice angle that slopes toward the outside of the house. I based the size of the outside frame on the size of the frames of the upper windows. After joining parts of the outside frame, I joined the inside and outside frames together. After letting everything dry, I started the painting process. Priming everything, then painting it with an oil-based paint that is more durable, but very much a pain to work with. I've ruined many articles of clothing while painting with oil-based paints. After several coats, the frame is done, and I need to do the same to the window. Painting the inside went well, but the outside, not so much. I went through the whole process, but I hadn't counted on the glazing material on the outside of the window, causing all the paint to just easily peel off. So I scraped, cleaned, and resealed all the edges with Bondo, hoping it would make everything stick. And it did. The bathroom window is going to be hinged from the top, so I need to add that hinge. I'm going to use a piano hinge we found at an estate sale. Turned out to be super tough. It's definitely made of stronger steel than the blades on my multi-tool. So once everything had a while to dry, it was time for assembly. The window needs a prop to stay open, so we added this one from Amazon. We needed to do some reframing inside to make a new opening for the window. Once that was done, it was just a matter of sliding the frame into the hole. It's going to need a little more weatherproofing, but that's going to happen at the same time as the back door installation. For the door, I'm going to start with the threshold. I figured out the width and cut it with the chop saw. Then I cut the basic shape with the table saw. Since we're going to paint everything, I filled and sanded all the small knots in the wood. We're reusing the existing back door, but it's got some damage to repair on the top and the bottom. Mostly just re-gluing some things in the right places and then resealing everything after it's dry. While that's drying, I started cutting the frame. We couldn't reuse the existing door frame, both because it had a lot of rot and it was not in the right place after lifting the house. With the exception of the threshold, the frame building process is pretty much the same as the window. I cut the box using the threshold piece from earlier as the bottom, a little glue and a lot of clamps, and we're set. Next, I'm cutting the inner door stops. I wanted to put an angle on this part to match the angle on the threshold piece, so I made a little template. I then cut those sides and glued and clamped them in place. Then I cut and glued the same part for the top. I cut the outside trim parts to length and temporarily clamped them in place to make sure they fit. Then, time to add some dominoes and glue and clamp everything. After it dries, it's a door frame. Then I marked the hinges and did some trim routing to make the mortise for the hinges in the frame. Now it's time to prime and paint. I had some issues with the size of the frame versus the size of my shop, so it required a little bit of acrobatics to move around. I took off all the hardware and did a little maintenance on the inside door hardware while it was apart. We're keeping the door red, but a different red. I tried a small spot of painting without priming, but the color was not nice. So I had to prime first. Primed one side and let that dry, and then primed the other, then painted the same way. Few coats on each side, we're almost ready to install. These hinges are pretty coated in paint, so it was time to make a little hardware stew. I have a crock pot in the shop that is dedicated to cooking paint-covered metal. Usually a few times and the old paint just peels right off. A lot of fiddling with the install, and we've got a door that closes. We were also able to add some more of the siding to the left of the door now that we know where the trim is going to land. The next trip to the tiny house was to weather seal everything. We added a drip cap and sealing tape around both the window and the door, and then we were able to add more Tyvek to the top part of this wall. The next trip I hope to finish the siding on the back. That would wrap up 2 of the 4 sides of the house. I'm also continuing my drawing challenge. My latest drawing is a view from the back door of the tiny house. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you in the next one.